My mother-in-law staged a fake intervention. So I ran for my life. I'm 27, living in Colorado with my husband, who's 29. We're active people, love hitting the trails, skiing, hiking, all that. And yeah, we enjoy a cold beer after a long day outside. There's seriously nothing like a brew at the summit of a mountain or a glass of wine while soaking in a hot bath on a lazy Sunday. Now, my mother-in-law? She's a character. Every few months, she offers to deep clean our house as a gift. We're not exactly neat freaks, so we usually say sure. That part was fine. But then things got weird. About a week ago, she asked me to meet her at the park. I figured maybe she wanted to chat or something. Nope. I show up, and there's a whole group of my in-laws standing there with this box. She looks at me real serious and says, "Evelyn, this is an intervention. We're here because we love you." My stomach dropped. She opened the box and started pulling out empty wine bottles, a couple full ones, and a lone beer can. She looked at me with this pitying expression and said she found my stash and she's worried I've got a drinking problem. That's when it hit me. A few months back, our bathroom sink got clogged. We were rushing to clear the space for the plumber, and I must have shoved some empties into my closet to get them out of the way. Totally forgot about them. The full bottles? Christmas gifts from my husband. I tried explaining, but she put a hand on my shoulder like I was in denial. "I know it's hard to admit," she said. "Look, I have a drink here and there. A beer with dinner, maybe a couple with friends at a brewery, wine in the tub once in a while. I haven't been drunk in years." But before I could say more, she smashed the wine bottles. The ones that were meant to be gifts. I lost it. I yelled that they weren't even mine to begin with, but she just looked me dead in the eye and did it again. So I ran. I ran straight back to her house, bawling. She kept calling me afterward, leaving messages saying I couldn't hide from my problem and that she was going to talk to my husband about sending me to detox. Then she pulled the one thing she knows hurts. She brought up the fact that we haven't had kids yet. That's always been a sore spot between us, and I thought she was finally over it. She never even explained the situation to my husband. Just told him she found a stash. Naturally, he freaked and said me running off made me look guilty. I felt completely alone. Eventually, he came around and understood what really happened. But now he's asking me to just let it go and avoid drinking around his family for a while. I'm not cool with that. Sure, I won't drink in front of them. Whatever. But I'm not apologizing for running away when I felt ambushed and scared, and I'm definitely not pretending I've got a drinking problem just to make his mom feel better. So yeah, am I in the wrong for refusing to play along with this? Sometimes, meddling goes so far, it's like they're living in a completely different reality. Next, we go from fake interventions to real betrayals. Imagine trusting someone with your child, only to find out they crossed the biggest boundary of all without even asking. My in-laws baptized my son without asking, and I'm furious. Here's the situation: my wife and I don't go to church. We've made it clear to everyone, including her parents, that we don't want our son to be baptized. We don't think it's necessary, and it's just not something we believe in. But despite all that, my mother-in-law went behind our backs and had our son baptized anyway. We went on a trip, and when we picked up our son, my mother-in-law casually mentioned that everything went fine during the weekend. She then dropped the bombshell: she had our son baptized at her church that morning. I was beyond furious. I didn't raise my voice in front of our son, but I just grabbed him and left without saying much. On the car ride home, I was fuming, and I told my wife as calmly as I could that this would be the last time her parents would be watching our son unsupervised. She tried to downplay what happened, saying it was just a little bit of water and some words, and it didn't matter since we don't go to church anyway. But for me, this was a huge betrayal of trust. I told her that under no circumstances would I allow her parents to watch our son again without us being there. I also said that if she didn't understand why this was such a big deal, maybe we weren't on the same page as parents and that we might need to see a counselor. She started crying and said I was being unreasonable, that I couldn't just make decisions like that on my own, and that I was the bad guy for trying to dictate what kind of relationship her parents could have with our son. I told her that my trust in her parents was gone. They did something behind our backs, and now I have no idea how they can repair that. I told her I didn't care if I was the bad guy, but what they did was unforgivable in my eyes, and I wasn't going to let them have unsupervised time with our son ever again. She's been trying to convince me to change my mind for the past month, but I'm standing firm. This is a hill I'm willing to die on. So, am I the bad guy for how I handled this? Trust is fragile, and when it's broken like that, it's not just hard to rebuild, it's nearly impossible. Now imagine trying to force a friendship that just isn't there. This next story is about family expectations, teenage rebellion, and one hilariously brutal PowerPoint presentation. My wife forced our daughter to be friends with her cousin. It backfired badly. So my wife and her younger sister are super close, practically best friends. Naturally, they always dreamed that their daughters, born just a few months apart, would grow up just as close. Well, now that we've got 17 years of hindsight, I can safely say that was never going to happen. There was never some huge falling out or big dramatic moment between the girls. My daughter just flat out doesn't like her cousin. And she never has. Still, my wife refuses to let that dream go. She keeps pushing, trying to force some magical bond that just doesn't exist. She makes our daughter spend time with her cousin at every family event. She's invited her on our trips, and even told our daughter to call her cousin regularly, like scheduled phone calls, to build their relationship. Now, between you and me, I'm pretty sure I'm the favorite parent in the house. My daughter and I just get each other. I know that probably drives my wife a little nuts, but hey, it is what it is. So when it comes to this whole cousin situation, I've honestly stayed out of it. From my point of view, trying to force two teenagers to be best friends is a lost cause. If anything, all this pushing is just going to drive them further apart. And here's where I may have messed up. Yesterday, my wife told our daughter she had to FaceTime her cousin. My daughter tried to get out of it, but my wife said unless she had a real reason for disliking her cousin, she had to go through with it because we're family. So, the call happened. And this morning, we woke up to a PowerPoint presentation waiting for us. The title? Valid Reasons to Dislike My Cousin. It was brutal. She had Zoom call clips, screenshots, even graphs. One section was titled, "Why is my cousin's voice so grating? A music theory analysis." Another broke down all the pointless conversations they'd had. There was even a part titled, "Rethinking the Idea that There Are No Dumb Questions." To be fair, it was smart, well put together, and hilarious, in a totally savage way. My wife was furious. She couldn't believe our daughter would go that far. Meanwhile, our oldest daughter and I were in tears from laughing. It was honestly one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Now, my wife wants me to back her up and help punish our daughter for bullying her cousin. But I've refused. I told her this whole thing wouldn't have happened if she hadn't tried to force the relationship in the first place. Still, now I'm starting to wonder if I let it go too far. I mean, yeah, it was funny, but it was also mean. Maybe sometimes, forcing something that's never been there only makes the cracks more obvious, and a little humor doesn't hurt. But when it comes to payback, some people don't settle for words. This next story is all about sweet, sweet revenge, and yes, it involves actual cake. She stole my favorite dress, so I took back her birthday cake. My friend, she's unique. Let's just say she's always been a little out there. Not in a diagnosed way, just in a you really have to spell things out for her kind of way. A few months ago, she borrowed a dress of mine that I really liked. Nothing crazy sentimental, but I bought it on a vacation years ago, and it was one of my favorites. She also loved the dress. So much, in fact, that one day, completely out of the blue, she just sent me money and said she was keeping it. I told her, wait, no, I didn't agree to sell it, but she basically shrugged it off and said, "You've been paid." What's the problem? Fast forward to her birthday last week. Her mom asked me to bake her a big cake, and I agreed. I make cakes as a little side gig, not super expensive, usually just a bit more than the ingredients cost. So I got to work and brought it over about 20 minutes before the party started. While I was there, I tried talking to her mom about the dress situation. I figured maybe she could talk some sense into her daughter. But nope, her mom told me to let it go. Said it was just a dress and that since I'd been paid for it, there was no reason to be upset. Even said her daughter really liked it, as if that made it okay. That's when I'd had enough. I pulled out the cash her daughter had sent me months ago, slapped it on the table, picked up the birthday cake I made, and walked right out the door. She started yelling after me, saying I was ruining her party and being petty. I just kept walking. She chased me down the sidewalk, demanding I give the cake back. I told her she had her money, just like I had mine for the dress, and according to her logic, I now owned the cake. So yeah, her 17th birthday had no cake. And apparently, I'm the reason why. A bunch of people are calling me petty now, but honestly, I just treated her the way she treated me. If she can buy something without my consent and keep it, then I can take something back that I made, especially after I tried to talk things out and got brushed off. So, am I really the bad one here? If you're bold enough to claim something that isn't yours, don't be surprised when someone takes something back. Now, what happens when someone tries to steal the spotlight not just on a birthday, but at a wedding? This next one is all about a proposal attempt that was cut off right in the middle of the big day. My cousin tried to propose during my sister's Zoom wedding, so I kicked him out. My older sister, who's 29, had been planning her wedding for over a year. But with everything going on, she obviously couldn't have the big event she dreamed of. So, she and her fiancé decided to have a Zoom wedding instead, inviting all our family and friends to join virtually. My sister asked me to host the call because she didn't want the stress of managing it herself. I was happy to help. The guest list was huge, basically, everyone they originally planned to invite was still included. During one of our planning sessions, my sister mentioned she wanted everyone muted during the ceremony to keep things smooth and respectful. She didn't want anyone talking over her and her fiancé. Totally fair. She also asked me to unmute everyone for a bit afterward so people could chat and celebrate together. I thought it was a nice touch, kind of like the virtual version of mingling at the reception. Fast forward to the day of the wedding. Everything was going great. I kept everyone muted as planned during the ceremony, and it went off without a hitch. Then, I unmuted people and asked them to raise their hands if they wanted to say something, just so it wouldn't turn into chaos. That's when my cousin, who's 27, started waving his hand like crazy. He's always been the loud, center of attention type, so I wasn't surprised. But then he said something that made my heart drop. You two are such an inspiration. It's given me the courage to do this. He turned to his girlfriend, who was sitting right next to him, and pulled out a small, ring-sized box. I knew exactly what he was planning. He was about to propose during my sister's wedding, on Zoom. My mind flashed back to all the times he'd tried to steal the spotlight, even as kids. I wasn't having it. I booted him off the call immediately. I didn't even think twice. I just said, looks like my cousin's having technical difficulties, he won't be joining us again. Everyone else just moved on like nothing happened. My sister and her husband didn't even seem to notice. The rest of the wedding went perfectly. But my cousin? He blew up my phone with angry texts, saying I'd ruined his special moment. His parents texted me too, saying I'd overreacted. But honestly, who proposes during someone else's wedding, even if it is on Zoom? That's not just bad timing, it's downright rude. So, Reddit, was I wrong for kicking him out? Should I have just let him go through with it? There's a time and a place for everything, and if you don't know that yet, someone's bound to show you the hard way. Up next, a father finds himself in the middle of family heartbreak, revealing a truth that sets off a wave of emotions he never saw coming. I told my kids why their mother has been crying. Now everyone's furious. I have a 22-year-old son who's married and currently staying with us because of some financial struggles. I also have a 20-year-old daughter who's back home from college for a while. Lately, my wife has been having these emotional outbursts. She just started going through menopause, so I'm sure that has something to do with it, but honestly, I think it's bringing up a lot of feelings she's been holding back for a long time. One evening, she opened up to me, saying she feels like she wasted her life being a stay-at-home mom. She admitted she's not happy with how the kids turned out. We're both Palestinian, she was born in Israel, and I was born in the US, but neither of us wanted our kids to grow up too westernized. We always hoped they'd stay connected to their roots, but she feels like she failed to keep that balance and that our kids have lost respect for their culture. Our son ended up marrying a white woman. To be honest, we don't have any problem with that, but he also left Christianity, and his wife is a very vocal atheist. That part really gets under my wife's skin. She can't stand having her around, and it's clear as day. Meanwhile, our daughter has taken a completely different path. She's a political activist now and has pretty much rejected everything her mother taught her. Things came to a head last night. My wife and our daughter-in-law got into this ridiculous argument over mascara. I wish I was kidding, but it escalated fast, and my wife stormed off in tears. It was tense, and I could tell she was holding back a lot of emotion. My daughter, always quick with her words, made a snide remark about how high maintenance her mom is. I stepped in and told them both to leave her alone. She's been going through a lot, and I didn't want them piling on. Later, my son came up to me and asked what was really going on. I decided to be honest with him. I told him that his mom feels like both of them have completely turned their backs on our culture and that it's breaking her heart. I figured he deserved to know the truth. Well, that didn't go over too well. Now both my kids are mad at their mother, saying she's being judgmental and unreasonable. And my wife? She's furious with me for telling them. But honestly, I still think they have the right to know what's been tearing her up inside. Sometimes honesty isn't the best policy, especially when it rips open wounds that were just starting to heal. When someone tries to take what isn't theirs, you sometimes have to show them the cost of greed. Now for a lighter, but just as dramatic, story of a Halloween candy tax that spiraled out of control. Yeah, this neighbor took things way too far. The great candy heist, when a tax goes too far. This story takes place on Halloween, and it's one of those moments where you just have to wonder what some people are thinking. I'm a 28-year-old mom of 2 kids, and I live in an apartment complex where trick-or-treating works a bit differently. Instead of knocking on doors, people put out pre-packaged bags of candy outside their apartments. That way, kids can grab a bag without anyone needing to answer the door. I had to work late on Halloween, so I asked my neighbor, a 36-year-old vegan mom of 2, to take my kids along with hers for trick-or-treating. When I got home, my kids were excited and had their buckets filled with candy from the 6 apartments that participated. Everything seemed totally normal. The next day, I took my kids to the park, and guess who was there? My neighbor, with her kids. While our kids were playing, she pulled out one of those pre-packaged candy bags from her purse and started munching on it. My daughter noticed and asked if she could have a piece, but the neighbor said no, claiming it was her candy tax for taking the kids out. I was a bit confused, so I asked her what she meant. She explained that since she did me the favor of taking my kids trick-or-treating, she took 5 candy bags from each of my kids as a tax. Her own kids only lost 2 bags each, because, as she put it, I'm your mom. I couldn't believe it. It seemed like such a weird thing to do. Then I noticed she was eating a Starburst, and that's when it hit me. I casually asked her if she knew that some candies, like Starbursts, aren't vegan because they contain gelatin. The look on her face was priceless. She quickly Googled it, got all freaked out, and stormed off, saying she felt sick. Now, every time she sees me, she shoots me dirty looks and doesn't let her kids play with mine. My husband thinks I'm at fault for not telling her right away that the candy wasn't vegan. But honestly, why should I have to police what a grown adult eats, especially when she's the one who essentially stole from my kids? I feel like if you're gonna take candy from kids as some weird form of tax, you should probably know what you're eating. Standing up for what you believe in isn't always easy, but sometimes, it's the only choice you have. And finally, imagine finding your dream wedding dress, only for it to be completely ruined by the very people who were supposed to support you. This last story? It's infuriating. I refuse to roll with a tattooed extremist. Am I the bad person? I've been training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a couple of years now, usually in classes where we wear full workout gear so our bodies stay covered. Believe me, that detail matters. Recently, our gym welcomed a new guy. I noticed him in class but made a point not to roll with him. Last week, I joined a session where we ditched the protective outfits, and my coach paired me with that new guy. He showed up in a sleeveless rash guard, and I couldn't help but see tattoos wrapping his arms and legs. When I looked closer, there was a large black emblem on his arm, one I recognize from World War II history but can't say out loud, and then the SS lightning bolt symbol stood out clear as day. He even had other markings like a Celtic cross here and there. Feeling uneasy, I asked my coach if I could switch partners. After class, he pulled me aside and wanted to know what was going on. I told him that this guy's tattoos were from that organization starting with the letter N, and I don't train with people who support that ideology. My coach got upset, accusing me of dragging politics into our gym. I shot back that letting someone flaunt those symbols on the mat is already political. A few teammates agreed with me, but some insisted I was making a mountain out of a molehill. So, am I the bad person for refusing to roll with someone who openly displays extremist symbols? Standing up for what you believe in isn't always easy, but sometimes, it's the only choice you have. Sometimes, it's not just about setting boundaries, it's about holding them, even when the people around you try to knock them down. Today's stories were full of cross lines, hurt feelings, and some well-deserved payback. Which one did you relate to the most? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.